Hi guys, welcome back. Today I am going to be talking about which schools to apply to and how many schools to apply to. I know that there are a bunch of you who are applying right now and the application submission date is very soon, which means you are probably editing your list of schools, whether that be adding schools, taking away schools, trying to stay within a certain budget, or just narrowing things down. I want to start off by saying that everything that I'm sharing in this video and all of my other videos are truly my opinion. There's really no right way to go about your application or just through life. This is just my opinion based off of my experiences and what I've heard. So I'm going to start off by talking about the amount of schools that you should apply to. There's no perfect amount of schools to apply to, but I think that a good number of schools to apply to would be about 15. When I was applying to schools, I split them into categories. I had a green category, a yellow category, and a red category. I had a spreadsheet where I labeled each school with their corresponding colors. So my green category included my safety schools. So these were schools where my application and my stats and things like that were higher than the average matriculating student at those schools. If the average student had about a 3.5 and I applied with a 3.9, that typically was a safe school. GPA wasn't the only thing that I took into consideration. I also looked at DAT scores. I also looked at the amount of out-of-state versus in-state students and just a few of those numerical values. My yellow category, where my application was matching with the average matriculating student or was a little bit higher. My red schools, on the other hand, were my reach schools, and those schools were the schools where my stats were either matching or below the average matriculating student. I think 15 is a great number of schools to have. Maybe do 5 green schools, 5 yellow schools, and 5 red schools, or you can do 3 red schools, 6 green schools, and 6 yellow schools. It just kind of depends on how safe you want to apply. There are people who apply to as many as 30 schools, or people who apply to maybe even 1 or just a handful of schools. Individuals who decide to stay on the West Coast or the East Coast or in their hometown will probably apply to way less schools. People only apply to the schools in California, and so they probably could care less if they didn't get into any, because they truly wish to stay in their home state. You know, whatever schools fall within your requirements and that you're comfortable applying to and of course paying for should be the amount of schools that you apply to. If you want to know how much it costs to apply to dental school, make sure to check out my most recent video to see how much I paid for dental school. So what schools should you apply to? I'm going to share some characteristics that you might want to look for in a school, or some things to consider when choosing the right schools to apply to. When I was choosing schools to apply to, I briefly looked at location, certain scores, and then their culture, and just read up a little bit about each school, but I didn't really do heavy digging until I started filling out my secondary applications and preparing for my interviews. I did even more digging when I started getting accepted into schools and I had to make my final decision. When I was applying to dental schools, one of the major things that I looked for is, of course, location. If you're an individual who wants to stay on the West Coast, then you would only apply to schools on the West Coast, or you might only apply to schools in certain states. Location is a big thing because you're going to be spending 4 or more years in this location and you're going to be living there, and 4 years is quite a while, so you want to go to a place that you're comfortable with. Some people might choose to apply to certain places because it's a short flight away or even a short drive away, and a lot of people apply to their in-state schools because they save a lot of money on tuition. In-state tuition is a lot cheaper than out-of-state tuition. Some people also think about their future after dental school. Some people might want to go to a dental school where they think they're gonna live after. That might not necessarily be their hometown, but if somebody saw themselves working or starting their family in California, they might want to go to a dental school in California so that when they're starting their own practice or looking for a practice to work at, it's a lot easier to network because they've already established some connections in the area, or they just feel like that would be a great place to start a business. So they might go to a school in that specific state or that specific city to start making connections during dental school. Another big thing is your stats. I don't think that stats should truly encourage you to apply to places or discourage you from applying to schools, but it is really important to take stats into consideration. If you have a 3.2 and you want to apply to a school where the average student has a 3.9, I mean, of course, go ahead and do it if that's really what you want to do, but you have to remember that you are paying for every single school that you apply to. If you think that your chances are not great, I wouldn't apply. I don't want to discourage you from applying, but if you have a low GPA but stellar extracurriculars and a great DAT score, then your chances are probably still really good. But if you have a 17 DAT, a 3.2, and 50 shadowing hours and no volunteer work, and you want to apply to one of those top schools, then I don't think it's worth $200. That's just my opinion, but if you want to apply, then go ahead and apply. One other major thing to consider is class size. I know that a bunch of people prefer working in smaller classes because they want more attention or they want a better faculty to student ratio, but other students prefer larger class sizes for more networking and making more connections and just maybe more help along the ways. That totally depends on you. Sorry, the lighting is a little different and the positioning might be too. My camera died, so I'm continuing this a little later. Something else you might want to consider is if you are looking to specialize after dental school, it might be important to look at schools that have the specialty that you are looking for, just so that while you're in dental school you have the opportunity to connect with these people, and you might also want the opportunity to stay at the same school because you're comfortable with the area, you might be comfortable with the facilities and maybe even the faculty. Although the faculty are going to be a little different, you have a general idea of how the school operates. There are a bunch of people who don't specialize, so this may not even apply to you. Another big thing is if you are heavy on research and you're really interested in research, you might want to look at schools that are also really big in research, just so that you can expand your knowledge and you can contribute to the school. If research is a priority for you and something that you really look forward to doing in dental school, you might want to look for schools that have research or have bigger, or I guess you could say better, research programs. I turned my light on because it was getting really dark, but it is also a great idea to align your prerequisites and your shadowing hours and other extracurriculars with this school. Some schools are really big on helping underserved communities, so if that's something that you also really like, then that might be a school that you want to put on your list because you want to showcase that your values also align with theirs. If a school's shadowing requirements are 200 but you only have 70, you can definitely accumulate hours as you're applying. You can just let them know that you're still going to be shadowing throughout the summer or whatnot, and they're pretty lenient with that, especially because of COVID. But if you don't have certain requirements, then it might not be a great idea to apply to that school. Some schools also require additional classes, and if you didn't have that for your undergraduate degree, then you probably shouldn't apply to those schools. Another great thing to consider is cost. Dental school is very expensive. At the end of the day, the degree is the same. You're getting your DDS or your DMD, and you want to finish it with as little debt as you can. And last but definitely not least is the culture of the school, the diversity, the demographics. For me, this was a huge thing. I wanted to be in a place that I was comfortable in because I knew that if I was living or studying in a place, whether it be the school or the city, somewhere that I didn't feel comfortable, I knew that my mind would be wandering and just thinking about other things rather than focusing on my studying. And with that being said, if you know that you're going to be distracted, you might want to look for a place that's further away from the city or doesn't have too many things going on so that you can solely focus on your studies. You should also look at the demographics of the people, whether your school is primarily Asian or how many Hispanics or even out-of-state students that they take. Being from Hawaii, I knew that every single school that I applied to, I would be out of state. So for me, when it came to price or just my chances of getting in, I knew that it was a little lower than those who would be in-state applicants. If you're an international applicant, your chances are a lot lower, so you might want to consider applying to more schools or certain schools. You might also want to go to a school that is primarily female or primarily male. For me, these kind of things didn't matter. You definitely want to be in an atmosphere that you are comfortable with, or you could be the total opposite and you want to go to somewhere where you are going to be totally uncomfortable because you love change and things like that. So there are a bunch of things to consider. The list goes on and on, but those were some of the major things that I considered when choosing schools to apply to. If you want to look at certain stats for every school, whether that be their demographics, their price, their location, their cost, whatnot, you can use the ADEA official guide to dental schools. It's like a book that has information on all of the schools. You can purchase that. I personally didn't look at that. I had a spreadsheet that had information on most, if not all, the schools. If you want to see that spreadsheet, you can send me a message on Instagram at Kylie Kargs, and I would be more than happy to share this spreadsheet with you. If you have any questions, you can also message me on Instagram. I know that this was brief and a little fast, but I really hope this helped, and I hope you're staying happy and healthy. Bye!